Enter the shadows, the top 10 most dangerous prison inmates in the world. Today we're counting down the top 10 most dangerous prison inmates in the world. These individuals are not just criminals, they are the epitome of evil, the kind of people who make you double-check your locks at night. Each one of them has a story that will send chills down your spine. We'll be presenting this list from number 10 to number 1, each more terrifying than the last. From serial killers to drug lords, these prisoners represent the darkest aspects of human nature. So without further ado, let's get started. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Let's kick things off with Richard Ramirez, famously known as the Night Stalker. Born in 1960, this man terrorized the streets of Los Angeles and San Francisco during the mid-1980s. His crimes were not just murders, they were brutal, sadistic acts that often included sexual assault and satanic rituals.
Ramirez's reign of terror lasted for over a year, claiming the lives of at least 14 people. His modus operandi was as varied as it was terrifying, breaking into homes, killing men, women, and even children, often using whatever tool was at hand. During his trial, he showed no signs of guilt or regret, often flashing a pentagram that he had drawn on his palm. His death in 2013 from complications related to B-cell lymphoma did little to erase the fear he instilled in the hearts of many.
The charming killer Ted Bundy. Next on our list is Ted Bundy, a name that has become synonymous with pure evil masked behind a charming facade. Born in 1946, Bundy was a charismatic and handsome man, traits he used to lure his victims. Unlike many other serial killers, Bundy was highly educated, which made him even more dangerous.
I deserve to be free. Bundy's killing spree spanned several states, including Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Florida, claiming the lives of at least 30 young women. His approach was often methodical. He would feign injury or impersonate an authority figure to gain the trust of his victims before abducting, raping, and murdering them. Bundy's trial was a media sensation, and he relished the attention. Despite his efforts, he was convicted and sentenced to death, a sentence carried out in Florida's electric chair in 1989.
The cult leader, Charles Manson. Charles Manson, the man who led the infamous Manson family, is next on our list. Born in 1934, Manson's early life was marked by neglect and abuse, setting the stage for the monster he would become. By the late 1960s, Manson had gathered a group of devoted followers, whom he manipulated into committing a series of brutal murders.
Helter Skelter is coming down fast. Manson's most notorious crime was the Tate LaBianca murders in 1969, where actress Sharon Tate and 6 others were brutally killed. Manson convinced his followers that these murders were necessary to incite a race war, which he referred to as Helter Skelter. Manson was eventually convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, receiving a life sentence. Even behind bars, he continued to attract followers and remained a symbol of evil until his death in 2017.
Chapter 4.
The Milwaukee Cannibal, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, often referred to as the Milwaukee Cannibal, is another name that sends shivers down the spine. Born in 1960, Dahmer's killing spree began in 1978 and lasted until his arrest in 1991.
Dahmer's method was particularly gruesome. He would lure his victims, often young men, to his apartment, where he would drug, sexually assault, and eventually kill them. What he did next is the stuff of nightmares. He would dismember their bodies, eat some parts, and keep others as macabre trophies. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, but was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. His crimes continue to be a subject of morbid fascination and serve as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity.
Chapter 5.
The Killer Clown, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, is perhaps one of the most disturbing figures on this list. Born in 1942, Gacy led a double life. By day, he was a respected member of his community, even dressing up as a clown for children's parties.
Gacy's method was as sinister as it gets. He would lure his victims to his home, often under the guise of offering them work or a place to stay. Once there, he would overpower them, often handcuffing them under the pretext of a magic trick, before sexually assaulting and strangling them. Gacy was convicted of 33 murders and sentenced to death. He spent 14 years on death row before being executed by lethal injection in 1994.
Chapter 6. The Highway Killer, Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, often referred to as the Highway Killer, is one of the few women to make this list. Born in 1956, Wuornos had a troubled upbringing, marked by abuse and instability. Her life took a dark turn in 1989 when she began a killing spree that would claim the lives of 7 men over the course of a year. Wuornos's method was straightforward but brutal. She would hitchhike along highways, posing as a prostitute to lure her victims. Wuornos was arrested in 1991 and eventually sentenced to death. She was executed by lethal injection in 2002, becoming a rare example of a female serial killer executed in the United States. Chapter 7. The Monster of the Andes. Pedro Alonso Lopez. Pedro Alonso Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, is one of the most prolific serial killers in history. Born in 1948 in Colombia, Lopez's early life was marked by extreme poverty and abuse. By the time he was apprehended, Lopez had claimed the lives of over 300 young girls across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Lopez's method was as cunning as it was horrifying. He would target young girls from impoverished communities, gaining their trust before leading them to isolated locations. Lopez was convicted of 110 murders and sentenced to 16 years in prison, the maximum sentence in Ecuador at the time. He was released in 1998 and subsequently disappeared, his whereabouts unknown. Chapter 8. The Hannibal Lecter of Britain, Robert Maudsley. Robert Maudsley, often dubbed the Hannibal Lecter of Britain, is next on our list. Born in 1953, Maudsley's early life was marred by abuse and neglect. Maudsley's first murder occurred in 1974, but it was his actions in prison that earned him his notorious nickname. Over the course of his incarceration, Maudsley killed 3 fellow inmates, each murder more gruesome than the last. His method often involved strangulation and stabbing, and in one particularly horrifying instance, he was said to have partially eaten the brain of one victim. His actions led to him being placed in solitary confinement, where he remains to this day. Maudsley's case raises important questions about prison security and the treatment of dangerous inmates. Chapter 9. The BTK Killer, Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader, infamously known as the BTK Killer, is a name that strikes fear into the hearts of many. Born in 1945, Rader led a double life as a family man and church leader while secretly committing a series of brutal murders that spanned 3 decades. His moniker, BTK, stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, a chilling summary of his method. Rader's killing spree began in 1974 and claimed the lives of 10 people before he was finally apprehended in 2005. Rader's arrest came after he began sending taunting letters to the police and media detailing his crimes and mocking their inability to catch him. This hubris ultimately led to his downfall when he sent a floppy disk that was traced back to his church. Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison, where he remains to this day. Chapter 10. The drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the infamous Mexican drug lord, is perhaps one of the most dangerous men to ever be incarcerated. Born in 1957, El Chapo rose to power as the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. El Chapo's operations were massive in scale, involving the production, transport, and sale of billions of dollars worth of drugs. His cartel was responsible for countless deaths, not just from drug overdoses, but also from violent confrontations with rival cartels and law enforcement. El Chapo's escapes from prison are the stuff of legend. He was finally recaptured in 2016 and extradited to the United States, where he was convicted on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, murder, and money laundering. He is currently serving a life sentence in the United States. And there you have it, folks, the top 10 most dangerous prison inmates in the world. Each of these individuals has left a trail of horror and devastation that will not be easily forgotten. From the sadistic Night Stalker to the cunning El Chapo, these prisoners represent the darkest aspects of human nature. Ensuring that these dangerous individuals remain behind bars is not just a matter of justice, but of public safety. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and never underestimate the lengths to which evil will go. Until next time, keep your doors locked and your eyes open.